Namaskar, this is Late Edition. On the show tonight, we'll discuss the cancellation of the GMR contract by the Maldives government for the Malé International Airport. Now, GMR's Malé Airport project is the largest FDI investment made in the Maldives till date. And of the proposed investment of $511 million, GMR has already invested close to $270 million. And the bone of contention between GMR and the Maldives government is the levy of an airport development charge of $25 per passenger and $2 per passenger insurance surcharge, which was struck down by a local court over there. And after that, the Nasheed government had agreed to compensate GMR, but the new regime reversed that decision, leading to arbitration. And the government, however, cancelled the agreement as void ab initio and having no legal effect. Well, and joining us in the studio are Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, Professor and Dean at the Jindal School of International Affairs. Thank you very much for Dr. Chaulia here. In terms of bilateral relations, government has said that, it's a setback for the relations. What are the ramifications of that setback?
Well, as you know, there was a so-called soft coup that brought in the current dispensation in Malé. And we felt that we were losing leverage because of this change. And now I see them as manifestations of further loss of leverage for India. The heart of the Indian Ocean, just a few miles from Lakshadweep, which is our border. It looks like I think we have to place this as not only a corporate dispute and a fight between investor and home country, but it will naturally implicate bilateral ties, and we will have to revisit how our strategies have worked or failed vis-a-vis commercial diplomacy, how much our state has been able to back our corporations. And it's a welcome sign in this case that Delhi has openly spoken out and at the same time is working behind the scenes to try and resolve the matter. So I think more such actions will be needed. Because if you think about it, our outward FDI is like $112 billion globally, which means more and more Indian companies are going global. They have multinational character, and our state, as you know, the saying goes, the flag must follow the commerce. And that is where I think we need to make special efforts, because what is disconcerting to me is that the Indian High Commissioner has been called as a traitor and as an enemy of Maldives by the president's spokesperson. So if it has reached this level of nastiness, clearly we will need to rethink our diplomacy and become much more proactive in fronting the interests of our corporations.
So Dr. Chaulia, then if the laws of contract do apply to the state, and it is bound by what it has signed, in the diplomacy that is to follow, with the pressure that is put on by the Indian state, will this be brought to bear on the government of the Maldives?
I hope so. If you think about it, the Maldives is a very, very tiny country.
Yes.
With a very small GDP. So a pullout of foreign investors in a panic will obviously derail their economy, which is anyway in shambles because of the political confusion and the crisis and the chaos since the overthrow of Nasheed. But I think there is a strong suspicion among many quarters that they may have lined up the Chinese or some other alternative investors to try and fill the gap after GMR's exit. So that is where it becomes even more problematic from the Indian point of view. And we will need to consider those, the displacement effect from a political sense. But I think definitely, most states do court foreign investment and are eager to hold on to it.
Sure.
And this is in many ways hurting the Maldives' image as not only politically unstable but also unreliable.
Right. Dr. Chaulia, in days that we are in, let's see what's happening in the Maldives. First of all, there was a soft coup that brought in this new government. It doesn't seem to accept the decisions of the old government as a result, and there's a lot of pressure. This is a huge source of income for the government. The airport, what else? And then there's the belief that this former government has, sold the silverware, in a sense, to a foreign company. The political pressure within the country itself has been brought to bear on this decision.
Absolutely. There is, a large segment of Maldives population which has been radicalized to take an anti-India position. And as you know, India has always promoted moderate Islam, and it has always adhered to these values across the world. So we are facing a backlash from some of these more fundamentalist groups, and there are parties like the so-called Adalat group which have been raising the hue and cry about India taking over Maldives and so on. And the old regime of President Gayoom, the previous one,
right, before Nasheed,
had also, is seen to be, now fanning some of these flames. So we are in a situation where we will need to, play our cards in a way where we reach out to more actors on the ground and build more alliances and coalitions so that we can defeat some of these fundamentalists who are now. GMR has become a political football which is part of Maldives' election as well, which is coming up next year. India bashing has somehow taken on somewhat like Nepal and Sri Lanka. It has become a kind of a favorite hobby horse for radical groups that just want to put up India as a straw man and then use the whole bogey in order to gain leverage over the electorate. So we need to build deep and pervasive ties within Maldives society, and this is the message that we are getting from this whole dispute.
Right. Now, you did mention earlier that there's a possibility that there's an alternative agreement made with China or something like that. But, is there any sort of proof that one can bring to this sort of a conclusion?
Well, thus far it's media reports and hearsay only. But, the Chinese are said to be bidding for another airport in another part of Maldives, which is very close to our own island territories in the Indian Ocean. And we have had to be, on the alert about Chinese construction of naval bases in the Coco Islands near Burma, part of Burma. So across the region, Indian Ocean, there is, a tussle for contest and for supremacy, especially a naval one. And it may be a far-fetched thing to connect GMR to this larger dispute, but one must be, you can never be sure that you're safe in this kind of situation. And I think we should not allow it to go the Nepal or Sri Lanka way, where we are then, left trying to catch up. And then the China card is being played on us so much. So I think the Wahid government should be sensible, and it looks like they seem to be, changing or mending the initial fiery rhetoric, and hopefully we should be able to work out some kind of backdoor deal that will save face for GMR, maybe get them a compensation, and more importantly, keep the bilateral relations as tight and as friendly and brotherly as they have always been between our two countries.
Dr. Chaulia, before the break, Dr. Shamala was saying that this is self-assertion really of the Maldives government and not quite an anti-India attitude. Well, if that's what you say. Right, sure. But if it is a self-assertion, then what was there a threat? Did you feel that there was a threat or something?
Well, as you know, there's been this whole phobia about India being a big brother in South Asia, and about being somehow throwing around its weight and being far too dominant over local interests. But in this case, if you look at it, the airport is actually a national interest. It should not have been derailed. So if at all it is self-assertion, I would call it self-destruction, because what they are trying to do is trying to hack at their own feet, both by inviting the ire of investors and by distancing India. And so I would rather want this to be constructive. And India, I think we would want this to be settled in a way where it advances the mutual economic relations between the two countries. India needs to contribute in so many ways apart from just infrastructure. And if you look at the larger tangle of relations that bind us, this is an irritant, and hopefully it should not be a really jarring one.
Right.
I just wanted to add also, the GMR, when it won the contract, it was through very fair means. It was internationally bid through World Bank, International Finance Corporation, but the allegation is now that, that was all dubious. It was because the previous regime was close to India, and that's why they gave it to India. So what we are now seeing is that the facts and the truth is clearly on the side of the Indian corporation. Okay. And therefore, Satyameva Jayate, we should have, ideally that should be the outcome.
Dr. Chaulia, diplomacy, what would you say?
Diplomacy, and I think eventually, democratic form of rule should prevail. Right. India should encourage free and fair elections next year when they happen. And in the interim, if we can just hold the fort and somehow manage this, I'm expecting that, we will have better outcomes, more legitimate rulers who are, going to think, because India is the force for promoting democracy, and if without us, and Maldives can never overcome the long, backlog of authoritarianism.
Right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for being with us. Well, by the contract, GMR is to pay an annual concession fee to the government of Maldives for a 25-year period of the contract. And because of GMR not being able to collect that departure fee, Maldives government had reduced that amount, the concessional amount. And reports suggest that the Maldives says that it has received only $78 million in concession fee when it was due about $105 million so far, while GMR says that it has actually paid $111 million so far. So the Maldives government says that the laws of Singapore and UK are clear that a court cannot issue an injunction against a sovereign state where compensation is adequate. It says that arbitration is on and compensation will be paid as per that process. So that's where we leave it. Thank you very much for watching. Namaskar.